You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. This edition will discuss food security and assessment of Nigeria's policy interventions. And joining me virtually for this conversation is Dr. Bolade Agbola, an agri-business expert, an agri-economist, and CEO of Lam Agro Consult. It's nice to have you joining us virtually for this conversation, Dr. Bolade.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Let us begin with your take on the Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee approach to tackling inflation, especially food inflation. Today is the decisive meeting. The meeting is going to take the decisions today. But what should be the policy direction for the MPC committee as they take decision and conclude the meeting around addressing food inflation? We know that the drivers of food inflation range from insecurity, cost of energy, and even the logistics challenges. And currently it's at 40.87%, surging the highest in decades. What should be the approach?
On the monetary policy today, I don't expect the rate to be softened, or what you call the loosening of the rates, because the inflationary rate is still ranging, and CBN has a responsibility to rein in inflation by keeping the rates as high as possible. And essentially, it's actually to manage demand. I mean, when rates go up, unfortunately, you stifle demand. And that is the way to manage the situation we have found ourselves, which we cannot take back from the policy measures adopted to stabilize the economy. The multiple exchange rates collapse into single exchange rates. The removal of substantial subsidy on the price of petrol, which we have been funding with debt. So the direction to me is that the rate tightening might still be expedient, or at worst, status quo will remain until there are positive indices that inflationary rates are coming down. Of course, the big component of it is the food inflation, which has gone down up to 40.8% at this moment. And that's the challenge we are having. I mean, we are actually at the onset of the harvesting season. Actually, food inflation ought to be coming out, but it also underscores the fact that there are so many other causative factors other than supply and demand interplay that is stoking food prices. And that we informed the government policy recently to also allow some food importation, which is before the main harvesting season comes up in September. And we will interrogate the component of that intercession to see whether it is expedient or what. I mean, every government policy have intended consequences and unintended consequences, but the government has the responsibility to do everything possible to bring down inflation. And that is what I think is going to still affect today's outcome of today's monetary policy. The worst case scenario is status quo remaining or some slight tightening so that we can actually manage demand and then, of course, rein in inflation, which is the object of monetary tightening in every economy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bolade. You talked about the policy steps. Now, it's a short-term measure, like you rightly said, but my concern is how effective and sustainable would this current policy trend address the issue of food crisis and achieve food security? In a conversation, you said, yes, it was expedient, especially in the areas of achieving that solution to food items like maize, rice, and wheat. So are you saying that this short-term measure is effective at this time, opening up for importation of the food items?
Yes, I even wish that would have come up earlier on, because the real lean period for us is between May and, well, July. That is why most of the harvest for last year have been exhausted, and then harvest for this year is creeping in. You've seen maize breaking the hunger, but the hunger refused to be breaking. But be that as it may, if you look at the component of the of the policies, look at wheat. We will not start producing wheat again until November, December, because wheat is grown in the northern part of Nigeria, the semi-temperate zone, between November and February. And in fact, it is the attention we paid to wheat cultivation, dry season farming, that actually accentuated the problem with tomato, that the land that is used under irrigation for dry season tomato was used for wheat. So we have shortage of supply, and that is why the price skyrocketed massively. Tomato production in southern Nigeria is eating the market and the price is crashing. So for the wheat intervention to allow wheat to come in, I think it is expedient, because we still have a long way to plant wheat. And then for maize, the question we ask ourselves is, even the major user of maize are the field millers. And this maize, as it is now, is not useful to them. The dry maize they will use to produce poultry and eggs and birds will not be ready until September. And there's this scarcity, there's this escalation. I know the poultry industry continuously clamor for liberalization of maize input, because it's about 70% of their input. So coming in to answer that request by opening that window, honestly, will help to actually moderate that market and make poultry meats at least more accessible to Nigerians. And then the issue of rice, based on our population, which is one of the items that has been liberalized through the short import window. Rice harvesting in southern Nigeria will probably start in August, and then of course and then most northern parts October, September, because it's a 4-month crop. So what has happened with rice is that in Nigeria today, we have excess milling capacity. Most of our rice mills, they are underutilized, and government is not allowing paddy importation. So allowing this to come out this time around will also help significantly to bring down the food inflation, because we are definitely not producing sufficient paddy to run those mills spread across Nigeria. So, but the key element to me, which I believe Nigerians should focus on, is what measures are we making to increase food production. We have 92 hectares of land, but in farm mechanization, in the ranking by nations, 195 nations, Nigeria is number 153. How can we feed ourselves? Yes, we have insecurity. It's been limiting investment in agriculture, but the truth of it is that beyond insecurity, there's something fundamentally wrong with our agriculture. And I believe government is trying to address that. Initially, there was a policy to bring in 5,000 tractors in 5 years, 1,000 per year. But statistics show that the total number of tractors in Nigeria is just 45,000, about 50,000 maybe today. That's an estimate done some few years ago. So our farms are not mechanized. And we need to change that attitude, either by leasing, either by loan or whatever. And government spending on agriculture is a pittance. The national government spending on agriculture is not up to 4%. How do we then feed a nation as big as this? So I believe this crisis is an eye-opener to show all of us that we are not doing the right thing concerning our agriculture. And then we need the political will to increase budget to agriculture. In fact, the only good thing I see in the Ministry of Livestock Creation is that it will create opportunity for projects to come up in the livestock area and for some increased government funding. That is the only good thing I see there. Even so, a lot have been criticized and say, why do we need a livestock ministry? The truth of it is that it's supposed to be, Nigeria ought to be a major hub for livestock production, because we have the expansive land that we can partition into ranches, organize together, and actually also we have to modernize our livestock production. The farmer elders crisis and all the rest is a reflection of how rudimentary our livestock farming is. And it goes to even the real agriculture, producing food. We have two of Africa's largest rivers, River Nile and River Niger and River Benue. We have not even done River Benue anywhere.
Irrigation engineering, yeah.
Irrigation. And every year, the water in River Benue will cause havoc in the Niger Delta. Whereas if we have done it, use it for agriculture, that impact will be minimized. So this is the time for us to just spend money on agriculture. Yeah. But this is an opportunity for us. We can do all-year farming in many parts of Nigeria. And I think this is a wake-up call. The hunger in the land, the food inflation is a wake-up call. And I believe that government have to live up to that expectation.
So, Dr. Bolade, according to ProShares analysis on inflation, food inflation averaged 39.24% in the first half of the year 2024. So, in bullet points, what are the 4 or 5 key steps that must be taken? Because we're looking at policy. Policy is very important, coherent policy to address the challenges of agriculture. You have an expertise also in agri financing and financial intermediation. So, what is the critical 4 or 5 steps that should be taken since food security is part of this government's agenda?
Well, to guarantee food security, the first thing we need to do is we need to de-risk agriculture so that private sector can go there. De-risking agriculture means spending more for the upstream sector of research, of extension, and support for farmers in diverse ways. I mean, land clearing can be an area of support. Even this tractor we are talking about, government should facilitate it. Government should create hiring companies, fund it in conjunction with private sector, so that even the tractor you use in Ogun State can be used in Sokoto by the time the rain gets there, by the time they are preparing for their cropping season. Of course, it is when then the issue of security too is paramount. We must intensify the kinetic and non-kinetic measure so that people can go and farm. We need big farms. We need educated people to go into farming. With then the other key thing we need to do is to restructure Bank of Agriculture and recapitalize it so that we can fill it with professionals who can actually understand farmers' needs. A commercial bank will not lend to cocoa production because it's already its 4-year crop. But a smart agriculturist knows that you can, okay, if you have 5 hectares, let us help you to fund 1. And then the one we have you to fund, we have cash flow based on the 4, and then you repay the loan in 3-4 years, give you maybe 18 months or 24 months moratorium. So these are some of the smart things that the commercial banks cannot do. So if you develop our Bank of Agriculture to be not only a lending institution, but deposit collecting institution, so that even the rural farmers can have good returns for their money. For instance, the commercial banks that are in those rural areas, if they put money there, they won't be pay them interest. The Bank of Agri can have branches in all the 774 local government, and farmers can keep their deposit there, and they can give them attractive return, maybe 2% per annum. And then you can now be able to lend to farmers at a subsidized rate using the farmers' fund. Then you can have cooperatives, you can have all sorts of institutions built around the Bank of Agri. I think this is the time for us to develop that. I believe those are the short-term things, but the long-term program. But the real thing is that government must spend more at various levels, at state level, at even local government now. They must have budget for agriculture so that they can support agriculture everywhere in the world. United States of America developed after the Great Depression the model for agricultural development, and it's simple. Trained college-trained agriculturists who went to school, who can adopt modern practices. We have a lot of universities, polytechnics doing that. Then 2, research. Our research stations are not funded. The only research station that is working significantly in Nigeria is IITA, and is globally funded. And the research station must have centers for research, product adaptation, which they can be commercialized, where people can buy improved seeds and all the rest. And then 2, extension services who can go from farm to farm, linking the farmer with the research stations. These are all expenditure. They don't bring money. Although we try to develop the agro-service center as playing dual role of selling inputs and doing extension, but it's never adequate. It's not going to be adequate. So because they will teach farmers this is what to do, but if you have government operated extension services, who can do demonstration farms, who can talk about even the GMO seeds that people are saying all sorts of things. In fact, farmers are not supposed to plant their harvest. They are supposed to plant new seeds every year so that they can have optimal yield. So those are some of the things that, so a lot of these things cannot be done by private sector. I've seen a lot of people having
private sector
concession, yes, that government has no business in agriculture. Yeah, the business of government is to facilitate it. The business of government is to de-risk it, and it needs spending to do all these things, smart intervention, so that we can feed ourselves. After all, food security is government security. If you cannot provide food for the people, you raise the risk of turning people to the streets. And we have seen it now that we must be intentional in funding our agriculture. There is not no short call about it. Egypt, one of the nations that is doing double our per capita income, is because they focus on agriculture. Ivory Coast they don't have oil, but their per capita income is even bigger than us. And they are producing 2.2 million metric tons of cocoa annually. We are just doing 290, 300, 290. And we have 18 states in Nigeria that can grow cocoa. So we have fallen short. It is the part of the Dutch disease from our blessing with crude oil. But we must spend that money from the oil sector to develop our agriculture, to get our people engaged, employed, to process, add value. We have processing capacity in this country for cashew, for all our export crops, but they are not working because funding is not there for most of them. So these are some of the issues we need to face. The challenges ahead is humongous, but government have to face it squarely, because I tell Nigerians that, look, yes, some people are leaving the country. In the long run, the global emigration threshold is 5%, which means 95% of all of us have to live and die in Nigeria. And we have to feed ourselves.
Yes,
feed ourselves. Is that bad?
Very important. You've raised a fundamental point of de-risking, and you've raised a fundamental point of the need for us to have recapitalize the Bank of Agriculture. And also, most important, Dr. Bolade, we need to revisit how we intervene in this sector. Trillions of naira have gone down to this sector. We need to have accountability and transparency. But that will be for future discourse. It's very important to see how.
Well, I also believe you are not spending enough. So you have
to
spend enough.
I'm not spending enough, but what has been spent, the reason
why I'm saying that Nigeria was part of the African governments through Maputo agreement that said 10% of our budget must be spent on agriculture. Nigeria has never met that percentage.
Okay.
We have never met. Although we are looking at the oil and gas to produce the growth impetus, but this is the time for us to have an inclusive growth and face this sector. Our budget for agriculture it does not. You can't. It's unfortunate.
Very clear.
And so you can't be talking of misappropriation when you don't even have enough. We need to build dams. Our dams needs to be made functional.
We made that point.
Budgets to read.
Proche made that point in its recent article on flooding and the need for dams. So it's very clear. I agree with you, Doctor, that we need to improve budgeting to agriculture. And then over the year, what we've inherited, the various interventions have to be very strategic. So spending is important, but it has to be strategic and accounted for. Yes, so let's go quickly to of course, an agri-economist like you, but the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, he expressed concern about this border opening for food importation. He says it will adversely impact Nigeria's agricultural sector. What is your reaction to this?
Well, Dr. Adesina is a professional colleague. He also, in fact, my book, he wrote the foreword. But I agree with him. It's a lot of concern. You know, when you raise concern, I've read that speech several times. We shouldn't get to that level. That's the truth. I think that is the concern. But when you are facing crisis situation, when people are almost jumping on the road, there is no food, price of food is this. You need political intervention. And I think what has been done is a smart political intervention, limiting it to a few crops, a few food items, and then limiting the period. And then we also almost got the period wrong, but this is the best time. Because honestly, if you escape this time, harvest will come, will give us false confidence. One of the things we need to understand in the whole process is that federal government has also exhausted all its reserves in distributing palliatives since last year. So we don't have food in reserves. So to me, there is a supply deficit. How do you meet that supply deficit? That is the situation. And that's why it raised the concern. It must be a temporary window. It should never be extended, because if it's extended, it will affect farmers' income. They are budgeted. Farmers are expecting bumper sales.
Yeah.
Yes, because, agribusiness is one of the most interesting business. When there is bumper harvest, prices crash.
Yeah.
So, and then that is why in some parts of the world, there are price support. When prices get low to a particular level, government starts buying to stabilize the price, stabilize the income of the farmer. But we are not yet there, because our farming is still not, it's still not organized, I can tell you. And it's because of the attraction to other areas. The farm labor we need, they are all doing, either doing Okada or doing, in fact, you go to the rural areas, most of our rural area farms are managed by foreigners, because our children are doing other things.
We need to make it attractive.
That's very sad.
Yeah,
that's very sad. Yes.
So as we look at the second half of the year, of course, I want to get from you what is the outlook and the possible drivers, and also the role of synergizing efforts with the commodities exchanges. I know you're also a certified stockbroker. You know that we have the Lagos Commodities Future Exchange, and we also have the FX Commodities Exchange. These are exchanges that can create value for smallholder farmers. They can also help in the whole value chain. We're not seeing much of integration in the policy of food security with them.
This is a very interesting second half of the year. For the exchanges, they are evolving, and normally the essence of a commodity exchange is to provide a venue for price discovery and minimize arbitrage opportunities. You can know the price in Sokoto, in Maiduguri, and then of course that helps you in buying, in stockpiling, in also releasing to the market. Actually, as time goes on, the commodities exchanges will play a critical role in those areas, and they are evolving in terms of systems, in terms of technologies, in terms of logistics support and all the rest. I know some commodities exchanges even are having warehouses and playing some vital role in the agricultural value chain. Those are part of the things we need. And definitely the commodity exchange too also should facilitate credit to the sector. I have some commodities in the warehouse. I don't want to sell it until October, but I need money now. I should be able to pledge the paper and get credit and move to another level of production. So their rules are there for them, and their growth potential is huge. As for this economy, we are going through a transitory stage. Those of us who deal with figures knows that we went through a similar thing like this in 1994 when Naira was devalued. When they did that massive devaluation, it went to 73%. And then 2-3 years later, it came back to single digits. We have done what we need to do as a people in unifying the exchange rate, which is done, and then in also removing this substantially petrol subsidy. I think the major driver of this country will be the success we are able to make in, because we must also face the fact oil and gas is responsible for 90% of our foreign exchange earnings and over 70% of national budget. So any improvement we have in those areas will affect inflation, will affect interest rates, will affect government expenditure, which is the fiscal element. Of course, we also believe that in the fiscal element too, the experiences we have faced now should inform reviewing our budgeting system and making it as realistic as possible. Even the campaign we are seeing all over the place about what is going to compensations of the people in government, in all the rest, this is the time for us to address it and normalize it, because all these things are in the social media. Anybody who's earning abnormal money, like, I mean, newspaper allowances, we should sit down. Those things were done for tax purposes at that time. Let us determine what our legislators should earn, what our government officials should earn, and then we need to bridge this inequality gap. And I think that is what the labor union should also be able to achieve in their negotiation with the president. We should not be made fools. I mean, as a Nigerian, I don't feel happy if anybody say he's collecting 1.2 million naira for newspaper per month. Is it transferring by night bus from Lagos to to Abuja? We should just clean up those mess, and we need all those things so that the country can move forward. A lot of positive things are taking place. This economy, definitely, if we can get it right with oil and gas today in terms of production, in terms of stopping all the oil theft and all the rest, the necessary resources to rebuild the economy will be available. And that should be our focus. And then, of course, we now make sure that all sectors are taken care of. Because oil and gas is not up to 10% of our GDP. So what are we doing to an agreed that is responsible for 25% of our GDP?
Double that. It's double that. Yeah. It's true.
So if you are able to have improvement in all those areas, honestly. So the second half of this year, to me, I see food inflation coming down with the efforts to bring in some food. And then with the harvesting season coming in too. I also see the foreign exchange market stabilizing with the refineries working at last. Because we spent about $20 billion in 2022 in importing petroleum products. That should reduce significantly. Then even for the foreign exchange market, as we are going to September very soon, cocoa season will start again. And then, of course, I know we get like $3 billion from cocoa annually. So, but the key thing is to work on all these things that are generating these resources and make sure that we make progress in managing them. Once we are able to do that, honestly, our economy will start growing and we will surpass any other. The IMF is predicting 3%. I believe if we can surmount some of these our challenges, our growth rate in 2025 will definitely get to 4 to 5%.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Bolade Agbola. Very interesting conversation. An agri-economist, agribusiness expert, and CEO of Lam Agro Consult. Indeed, you've said it. We need to de-risk the agri sector. We need to recapitalize the Bank of Agriculture. We also need to invest in infrastructure, irrigation, and all those access ways to the farmlands. Also incentivize young people into the farmlands, increase mechanization, and also, most importantly, that political will to support the agri sector. And like you rightly said, increase spending. Though I was saying that the past spending has to be accounted for, but there's no problem. Let's increase the spending, but let's have more transparency in the spending so that we have value in the agri sector. And of course, most importantly, invest more in research. That has been lagging for our country. And I believe that there'll be a lot to look at the impact in the second half of the year. And we'll have course to bring you on board to discuss and look at the agri sector once again. Thank you for this very insightful conversation, Dr. Bolade Agbola, agri-economist and CEO of Lam Agro Consult. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much.
To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, especially the whole analysis from Prussia on inflation, the June inflation and the effects, and of course, the directions around food inflation and what needs to be done, visit the Prussia website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage further. Till we come your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socioeconomic developments around you because it is a wise thing to do. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Thank you for watching and bye for now.